Hi, and welcome to week 2 for Self and Sociology. This is the lecture on social research, so we're going to be recapping what we should have already covered in terms of readings, and then looking at the notion of research, and then we'll look at the assignment that you're expected to do, and then finally I'll do a couple of other shorter lectures on elaborating some of the concepts that I talk about just in passing here. So you should be aware that there are online tutorials. If we go to the web page for the website, this is what it looks like in my view, and you can see here we've been having online chats. They're on Tuesdays, twice on Tuesdays. It'll be 10 a.m. and 5:30 will be the normal times, but we're going to do a 1:31 this week instead of the evening one, just because I have a research seminar I need to attend. I've added a few things since we last spoke, so I'll just point those out to you. The Gurmov textbook, which will be the focus for the final exam, the multi-choice exam, has a website, and it's got quite a lot of material there, podcasts and summaries that summarise the material. I also found this Sociology the Basics textbook in the library. Some students have said they found that useful. It's a free one from the library, so if you feel like you want to read another version of similar material, then that's well worth a look. The chats will remain up, and you can look at the whole transcript of the chat inside it. And I've also started a weekly polling of the students, so you can express where you're at and where you're going. It's just a short 5-minute survey. Come in each week and tell me how you're going, what you learnt, what you're struggling with, anything you think I can do to help. So that's all collated anonymously and gives me some feedback. So there's been some good feedback this week already. A couple of queries though. Now, one is that people are saying they want the readings in advance. Well, the readings are in the course profile, so if you go on to the information block and click on course profile, it will take you to this page, and if you go down a little bit you'll find the schedule, and the schedule gives you the readings for each week. So they're all there. So you've already got the readings for each week. You can read ahead, or as I say, you can read the all-row textbook as well. Also got learning resources, so I've put a few ones in there. Mark Steele's a stand-up comedian, so if you're going to look a bit about the French Revolution and Karl Marx, one of the leading social thinkers, then well worth having a look at those. Some people ask about the formatting and referencing, so that's in the referencing box over here. It's a Harvard referencing system, so all the details are there for that. And the formatting guide tells you about the paragraphs and indents and how much margin and double spacing and all that kind of thing we expect in sociology essays. So that's there. As for an actual template for the report, we'll be working through a bit of that in this lecture, and then I'll give you a bit of a template so you know what that looks like. That's the latest from the Moodle site. What about in terms of readings? Well, the Willis reading gives you the sort of background to the discipline, so we're not expecting a huge amount of detail here, just a sense that sociology is a modern discipline. It emerged in the modern era. In the big tumultuous changes that were the French and Industrial Revolutions, so where modern society was born, so capitalism became more widespread, so what we think of as factory work rather than working on the land took hold in England. And in France they had a revolution where they took the king's head off and started a new kind of democratic society, and notions of human rights are all born in and around those kind of revolutionary changes. And sociology emerged to help explain those and explain why they happened in Europe in particular, and to some extent to explain why they didn't happen anywhere else. And so the discipline of sociology has a body of theory like environmental science or psychology or social work that is around some key thinkers like Marx and Weber and Durkheim. So they produced the sort of classic studies in sociology. So Marx with his analysis of capitalism, Weber had a range of work on religion, as did Durkheim, Weber's famous Protestant ethic thesis about why it is that in modern capitalist societies the notion of work is seen as a good thing for its own sake, and Durkheim's study on suicide we already mentioned. The idea that there's more going on in society than individual choices. Of course, questions could be raised about this typology. Where are the women? Where are the founding mothers of sociology? Can the remarks of three white male intellectuals, European educated intellectuals, do justice to an understanding of the world in a global sense? And I certainly think they have something to say about that, but it would be very strange to regard those three thinkers as some sort of monopoly on knowledge. And of course, they're not the only thinkers in sociology either, and there's different approaches. But it's enough for you to be familiar with the names. The Gurmov text elaborates that theory and some of those theorists in a little more detail. There are kind of big picture theorists and small picture theorists. There's symbolic interactionism, which is about how human beings one-on-one connect with each other, the self and other kind of dynamics, right the way through to the bigger structural theorists like Marx, who look at the big picture and how capitalism operates. There's all of this is a discussion of the sociological imagination, which is the focus of your first assignment. And essentially making connections between those private issues, those private troubles, and the public nature or the social context in which those things are created, and how the two inform each other. Gurmov talks about reflexivity and the importance of being a reflexive researcher and a critical researcher, and so certainly want to emphasise that what our work involves is always being critical of our own assumptions, about reflecting on what we've done. Learning is a process of reflecting on what we've read and talking about it with other people and going back and reading it, seeing how we might apply it, and moving back and forward between those things. We've already seen on the discussion board some of the classic, emerging from those discussions come those classic debates in sociology. So they're not just the first questions that occur to students, they're in fact pivotal questions around how the discipline operates. We've seen those discussions on the Moodle boards about, how does the society and the individual interact? How do we understand the connection between the two of them? Or to what extent is personal responsibility important or not important? How do we get around this kind of blaming society or blaming the individual, blaming the victim? And in sociology, that's called the structure and agency debate. Sociologists spend a lot of time explaining, contrary to the sort of dominant cultural norms, that the society is a structured totality. It's a whole that needs to be broken down, and we can see how these structures operate to some extent over the heads of individuals, and so they shape behaviour. So yes, there are individuals too, but there's no individuals outside of the social context. There's no social context without individuals. The two mutually imply each other, and I've used the example on the discussion board of a fish in water. We can mentally separate the fish from water. It doesn't make sense to do that except in your mind. In real life, the fish and the water are separate. To ask, is the fish restricted by the water it's a meaningless question. If we took the fish out of the water, the fish would die. So that human beings live in societies. That's the way they've always lived, both historically and personally. We're always connected to other people. So we need to be aware that those two things aren't really two sides. Well, they are really two sides rather than a spectrum with individuals on one end and society at the other. But that's good to see some discussion of those. But it's also important to see that they do relate to social theory in effect, and how the two sides of the picture are related. This week we're going to focus on what sociologists do rather than what sociologists think. And essentially a sociologist is a social researcher. And I've put this definition together from my recent reading. I think that's why I was recommending Allbrow to you. That I would say sociology is the study of systems or networks of social relations, and that can work from dyads, from self and other, right the way through to the larger structures like class and race and gender. And it's focused on modern industrial societies. We might use the same techniques as anthropologists who are more interested in pre-modern tribal societies. But ethnographic work, going and living with people and understanding them from the inside. Anthropologists do that work with tribal people, understand their kinship and learn their language and so on. social researchers have done the same sort of work in big American cities or in small Australian towns come to that. So that sort of ethnographic living among the people and trying to understand it that way. So sociology is based on this body of empirical and theoretical research. It isn't just something a set of ideas that we draw on from the past. And so I guess the question is, what do we mean by research? Well, research means to search again. That's just the straightforward etymology of the word. So to look again at something. We know that societies are complicated. We know that they're not what they appear to be. So we need different methods then for looking at social relations in a systematic or, if you like, scientific way. At CQU we have two broad research institutes, the health and social science research. These are the ones that I've had a bit to do with, and that looks at the health and well-being of environments, families and individuals. So we have a population research lab. We ring up people at random on the phone and ask them survey questions, which, you know, is unfortunate with all the marketing that goes on now, but we try to do that survey work. You might have heard of the 10,000 Steps Health Promotion Program that was invented in CQU. Here on Mackay campus we've got the Centre for Domestic and Family Violence, and there are others. The Institute for Resource Industries and Sustainability, which has the Centre for Environmental Management. I've done some work with them with their social sustainability group. We've done a livability survey here in Mackay with that team, and we've done a survey of all the sugar farmers, providing cane to the mill and what their future plans are. You can see others there with more engineering or business focus, or with specific water and science sort of focuses. There's a peak body for sociologists in Australia, like there are for psychologists and social workers. It's called TASA, the Australian Sociological Association. Its job is to professional development and to research, teaching, and keep a track of what's going on. You can go and have a look at their website there. As for the research we all do in the sociology department, this is Susan Rockloff. She's an environmental sociologist, so her focus is on environmental planning and management, policy, participatory tools for marginalised stakeholders, for looking at the way resilience in communities operates. So she and I have been involved in a project, and others have been involved in a project looking at Theodore and how they survived the terrible floods a few years back, where they were immersed several times. And so we went out there and did an action research project with them. And action research is a particular method where we don't just study people or survey them. We interact with them and try to actually improve resilience in the process of studying what resilience means to the people of Theodore. And so there's a back and forth and a give and take in that research relationship, rather than us as the experts just parachuting in there and finding out what's going on and then going back and publishing that data. We try to give the data back to them and to help them understand resilience, and indeed by engaging in these processes how we can improve resilience in the town as well as understand it. Wendy Hillman used to be the coordinator for this course, but I've taken over. You can see her list of research interests there. She's just had a book published on ecotourism and eco tour guides and how they think about nature and what it is, how they see their role in relation to nature. She's also doing work in Nepal with the Nepali Planning Commission. She's interested in public research. That's how she engages in the community, and she's also on the TASA executive. I have a range of interests. I've already mentioned a couple of them. You can see them some listed there. There's a sugar growers, $40,000 there. We've done two surveys with them now. The livability audit, we've just redone that one to find out what people like about Mackay and what attracts people to Mackay. We've looked at family services in the mining sector, and I'm also writing an unfunded project, a history of a communist trade union activist. So I'm interested in community development and local economies, social impacts of mining, and masculinity and violence. So I haven't done much with that of late. More broadly, we can look at the classic sort of Australian studies, and I don't want to go through these in detail. Just wanted to put them up to give you an idea of the scope of research that's done in Australia, what Australian sociology looks like and where our contributions particularly are. We'll very soon come across the name Raewyn Connell, who's been a big name in sociology for decades, probably one of our most internationally recognised sociologists. And she has done work on class going back to the 70s, but particularly gender and power and masculinity very, very famous researcher in that area. Likewise, Connell has worked with schools and education. She's in fact a professor of research, professor of education at Sydney Uni. We've had Michael Pusey's analysis of neoliberalism as the dominant policy framework, and that was based on just interviews with senior bureaucrats. See, I've listed there the different theories and methods that they've drawn on. In terms of feminist sociology, there's very strong research there going back to the 70s with Anne Summers, who went on to be head of the Office of Women. Body and societies. The body is a very big area. How we think in the body in social ways. We have an advanced course on that, and Brian Turner's the Australian sociologist who was involved in that. Again, gender. If you do anything about medicine, you'll know about medical dominance. That was Evan Willis, the Australian sociologist who wrote your textbook, The Little Sociological Quest, and about the dominance of the health system by medicine, and Braithwaite's work on crime and criminality. One of the classic studies was done up here, an ethnographic study up at Moranbah. It's called Open Cut. So that was a very class-based study, an industrial ethnography looking at Peak Downs and Gunilla mines up at Moranbah. This is going back into the 70s, and it was also studies of their wives and families, so it was trying to bring the Marxist and feminist theories together. Australia has a long history in particular areas, urban and community studies, so studies of small towns, Newtown, in the suburbs of, not the suburb Newtown, but the suburban inner city. Wild's work on a place called Bradstow, what he called Bradstow, and Ken Dempsey's small town and a man's town. Also strong work in the welfare state with Lois Bryston and women in the welfare state, and even some work on social research methods, famous text there. So you can see there's a broad scope and a range of work that sociology draws on, and as I said, it's about researching, about looking again to see how we can understand social relations in a systematic sort of way. So now I just want to walk through the basic process of research and then look at your much simplified assignment, and then in the next lecture we'll come back to a closer look at some of the concepts and exploring them a little bit more. But probably have a bit of a break here and then go on to the next section.